Welcome back. 5:47 on Daybreak, and this morning we're remembering some changes in attitudes, the joys of running by an open hydrant, and how many times have I told you not to run in the hall?
One too many times. Dave McKinley has our weekly walk back through time when those stories and more were all news to you.
Would you believe it was 10 years ago this week when New York finally approved medical marijuana, but under the strictest terms, including a prohibition on smoking it? Just 10 years later, the state's attitude is smoke 'em if you got 'em, and now in fact sponsors both the sale and recreational use of the drug. There was growing concern over the number of illegal crossings at the southern border by unaccompanied children, which had reached 47,000 in a year. In more recent times, you might get that many in just a couple of months, and there was controversy brewing in Lancaster.
They've had it all these years. Nobody's complained.
And everybody is so sensitive about everything. When is this going to stop?
The issue was the name of the school's sports teams, which has since been changed and which today the state would not even allow them to have, as they still could this week in 2014. 20 years ago this week in Washington, the new National World War II Memorial was welcoming its first visitors, and Spaceship One made history when it became the first privately developed and privately owned rocket to cross the edge of space this week in 2004. 30 years ago this week, and just like now, sometimes it got hot in Buffalo. In fact, we were in the midst of a heat wave almost identical to the one forecast for this week. So while the weather here has really not changed over time, back in those days, the city didn't have cooling centers, but instead it seemed there was always some guy down the street with a wrench. And well, you remember the rest, don't you? Oops, look out. And this was at a time when the state was pushing hard to finally complete a long planned for road project in western New York.
I think this project is so right that we'll get it.
Take a look around for clues as we pose this week's News to You pop quiz, which is, what major expressway do you think the state was really pitching to expand this week in 1994? 40 years ago this week, when Governor Mario Cuomo came to town, he was often accompanied in the background there by a top aide, a South Buffalo native who would soon become an even more familiar face than his boss. That is future NBC Meet the Press host Tim Russert. Cuomo was here to announce a state-backed program offering low mortgage rates to eligible homebuyers.
It's a 30-year mortgage at 9.9.
Wowzers. Hey, if you remember when Fred Langdon was the Buffalo Fire Commissioner, the distinctive waggle of Mike Schmidt's hips before he knocked another one out of the park, or once wearing with pride, or perhaps now looking back with abasement, the distinctive orange belt as a member of your school's safety patrol, then you remember the days when it was all news to you.
Okay, here's the answer to this week's News to You pop quiz. The Western New York Expressway that the state was pushing to expand 30 years ago this week. You can see it there. Definitely looks like the 219, right?
Yep, you called that one for sure.
At the time, it ended in Springville, and it would take more than 20 years before it was extended, and only for an additional 4 miles. The long ago plan was to take it all the way to Salamanca. That's currently on hold.
Okay, question.
Indefinitely.
4 miles. That's a lot of money, a lot of work going in just to bypass Springville, right?
Right. So when you get there to the end, there's a sign that says, "Welcome to the bridge to nowhere." So right at the end of the 219, you have to get off and
right,
then
Nashville, Asheville.
Nashville, right. So what is that? Is that just a reference to where the construction stopped? It was supposed to continue, but it...
I would imagine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're going to have to take a picture of that sign.
Oh, yeah, it's right there. It's hard to miss.
One more date, by the way. We were talking about 10, 20, 30, 25 years ago. On June 19th, 1999,
hold on.
Sabres fans.
Oh.
No goal. That was the no goal game 25 years ago this week.
When the cup went out of the arena to much dismay.
Yes.
Never been closer since then.
25 years ago.
25.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. By the